Hey, and thank you so much for 500 subscribers. This is one of 3 videos that I'm making to celebrate, and this is a story, and this story tries to explain a little bit why there is a sim makeover challenge and why there also is a shell challenge. And so naturally, because I don't know what you do with the sim makeover and what you do with the shell, I can't really tell how the story is going to end. So I hope you're going to like the story, and if you feel like inspired or creative, you can of course write your own ending to the story or make a little machinima or a short movie with these like sims and the story. But of course I know how much work this is, and so I don't expect anyone to do it, no pressure. I just hope that you enjoy this little story. There once was a pretty normal man called Lucas living in a very small town, and he loved nature, he loved herbalism, and he loved animals. But he lived there in poverty and had been hungry for weeks. So when he heard the townsfolk talk about a wild boar that was said to be roaming the forest, he decided to go into the forest and hunt that boar to finally not be hungry anymore. But he had no experience in hunting. He was strolling through the woods and he got the feeling that they have a kind of magic aura about them. But he was walking and walking there, and during these hours he found some wild berries to have as snacks, but he found no signs of his prey. And through all that time he had no idea that he had become the prey and was followed by a large pack of wolves. Because he was unaware and because he was exhausted after half a day of wandering, he sat down in the shadow of a tree to take a breath and relax a little bit, which is exactly when the wolves decided to attack. He tried to run, but he was surrounded. And when he thought that this was the end, a wonderful, magical, and colorful being came out of the woods. With a movement of her hands and the flash of light, she calmed down the wolves. Lucas stood there, startled, not knowing how to express his thankfulness. But after a little while, he just came up to her and gave her a hug to express how thankful he was. She told him that she trusted him. He didn't really know what to make of it, but she didn't give him the opportunity to think too much and just grabbed his hand and led him deeper into the woods, where she showed him her home. Her home was hidden deep in the woods and overgrown, but full of light, and you could really tell that there was someone living there who had a little bit of magic within themselves. She had seen how hungry he was and invited him in, where she gave him some of the stew that she was making. The two of them sat together around the table and talked for hours. She told him how her name was Eleonora and how she was cast out of the wizard school for her experiments and for wanting to develop new spells and potions, and how she was mostly interested in nature magics. And she was also weirdly interested in his mundane life living in the village. After he had come back to visit her a few times, she invited him to live with her, and he gladly accepted, being excited by this magic life but also feeling this deep connection to this magical woman that he had met. The two of them quickly became best friends, being able to talk for hours and giving each other exactly what they needed. But also, after a few years, a little bit of romance developed between the two. And born out of that romance was little Theresa. She didn't possess any magical powers, but she was very cute, and she also learned from a young age how to survive in the woods. But the town was located a few hours away from their magical forest home, and the way there was dangerous, so even as little Theresa grew up, she never really got in contact with any other humans. She grew up to be a very talented hunter, and because she needed to blend into the forest, but also because it is kind of difficult to dye clothes in the forest, she mostly wore brown, practical clothing. She also was fascinated by her mother's magical powers and loved to watch her potion making and experimenting for hours. But one day, one of her mother's experiments went wrong. She was trying to create a new potion in her experimentation and cauldron room underneath the thatched roof, when the potion exploded and the roof as well as the wooden floor caught fire. Then also her other potions caught fire and exploded too. Quickly the whole house was burning. Now adult Theresa was collecting edible roots and berries at the time when she smelled the smoke, turned around and ran up to her home, only to find it in ruins and no sign of her parents. And while she stood there crying, a thunderstorm came and extinguished the remainders of the flames. On the interior there was nothing left but the ashes of the furniture they called their own ones. She just had to run out again, breathe and cry. And then she saw a group of people running up to the house. They were townspeople who had seen the cloud of smoke and were worried about a forest fire, so they came to extinguish the fire. One of these people were you. You see this girl standing in front of the door of her once home that is now all burned down. You see her crying and you want to go up to her and kind of help her. So you go up very carefully to see if she kind of doesn't want the attention or doesn't want a hug, but she just seems miserable. So you go up to her and you hug her and you try to make her feel better. She starts crying onto your shoulder, so you decide that you want to help her and that the two of you are friends now. After a while of talking and learning about her situation, you decide to give her a makeover with your own clothes so that she feels right at home in the town too, and you also help her clean up the ashes and the mess that the fire has left and bring back the house to its original state, ready for a new and fresh start and ready for a renovation.